Good afternoon. It's Thursday, July 11th, and I'm here with my friend Michael, and we're workshopping funny again today. And you had some homework last week, or you gave yourself homework, so I didn't give it to you, but
I did. I was going to come prepared with a minute to do, and then we're going to go over that. I tried to work on jokes. I even at my son's coach pitch baseball, I was talking to another parent for like an hour. And at the end, he was just like, man, writing jokes are hard. A very friendly guy was asking me about different things, like what I was typing on, because I had my computer out there. I was trying to work on some jokes, and it just wasn't coming together. So I'm not sure why it wasn't coming together for me. But I tried to play off of the topics we talked about last time, which were like performance enhancers and like silly performance enhancers and a couple other things. And I tried, but I don't feel like there are any really good jokes that came out of this.
Okay. I got one immediate thought is maybe on a future call like this, we should bring my friend Now in. And I'll explain to you later. Well, no, I'll explain to you why I think it'd be fun. It's a human design thing. It's this idea of a penta and building energy towards something. And her and I, when we talk, we can feel the energy there. And then you could basically latch onto it and potentially like use it as a vehicle for idea creation. Like energetically, it might be something to play with. But that said, so that's what you do, as part of your process. You would sit down with a laptop and go, I got to write jokes right now. Like I have a deadline and I got to write. So does that help your creative process by putting yourself on the spot?
That's a good question. It depends. If it's, and this is part of the reason. So we talked about last time about how it has to be something like true to me or relates to myself, because then I have actual things to pull from and I'm not forcing it. And I felt like yesterday, especially, I was just forcing it. So I was trying to create jokes based on things that had somewhat have happened. Like, so for example, I was watching a show with my wife and I said something that I felt really bad about. It was a reality show about these chefs, and there's one really talented chef and he had a very strong accent. And I asked my wife, like, where do you think his accent's from? And it turned out he was deaf. He didn't have like an accent. He was deaf. And then so I tried to come up with a joke based on that about wondering where somebody's accent was from, and then learning that they were deaf. And then I felt so stupid because I should have seen the signs.
I don't think so. You're carrying way too much weight with that. I just played in a ball tournament this weekend where one of the guys in the field, he's a great ball player, but he's deaf. And so watching him play and people playing against him and not knowing he's deaf, because he can throw the ball like no one I've ever seen. Like he has an arm, and he throws, but it can be a bit wild. And if he can't hear someone saying like no play, which is usually what someone would call at shortstop, like there's no play, he doesn't hear that, right? So the ball's coming anyways. And so observing that all weekend, or we didn't play against him the entire time, but a few times, it was like his world is just totally different, and his experience is totally different.
And I tried to see in it. I tried to slip in the joke there, and I didn't think it worked. Like, I should have seen the signs, deaf sign language. I was trying to work that in.
Oh, are you telling a joke still?
Yeah. So, and I'm supposed to tell the joke deadpan. So, like, I don't blame you for not getting it. But the other problem with the joke is that's the one I was working on, and I was kind of proud of it. The problem is I talk about somebody speaking and then not seeing the signs. So it kind of contradicts your mental image of, well, if a deaf person is using signs, then why would you hear their voice and think there was an accent? Both can be true, but I don't think it's really clear in somebody's mind. And I think that's why the joke didn't work.
Yeah, sorry. It's so funny where my brain was like, oh, wait, buddy, you're being too hard on yourself. And
right, because I often am. It's a natural response, especially with you knowing me. That makes perfect sense.
So funny. Well, and so the joke would work, but I think it needed, I guess if you're on stage and you're telling a joke, they're listening more intently for the joke. I sometimes just hear problems to solve, and so I think I went right into problem solving mode. But
No, but I even tried. So I tried the joke with the other parent, and he didn't. He kept trying to like add other words to it and things that really wouldn't have worked.
mhm,
He was trying to help because it just didn't click for him either. And so I think there's something off. So that was like the one I was going to start off with. That I was excited about, but I know it needs some work.
mhm. Why were you excited about it then? Like, what was the
I
original?
just thought it was really funny. It tickled me until I realized like the flaw in it.
Hmm. Hmm. I don't have anything to add at this point or ask, but
Yeah,
you want to explore that joke further, or are you wanting to park it and try something different?
we could. I'll quickly go over the other couple premise / rough jokes that I come up with.
And for anyone that might be tuning in, like the idea is that you've got a show, a 1 minute spot in a week or so, or less.
Correct. What there's 1 minute Saturday, so in a couple days,
Woo,
and
okay.
I can always pull from old jokes that I know work good enough, and I don't want to just force new material, but I want to do new material.
Yeah, right. So
I don't
you
know.
know you've got a backup plan that you can pull out some of your work from before, but you'd
Right.
rather
Or my other backup plan is just not go.
not. Well, there's an option too.
I'm not like, I didn't say for sure I'm going at it and make a commitment, although I would, usually go. But yeah,
Hmm.
I can back out. I don't want to back out,
Well,
but
let's assume you won't, because
okay.
you can do other material that you've already worked on that you could even just repolish. Like maybe there's
Right.
spin that stuff and see what's working. But okay.
True. All right. Another one is close the gender pay gap. Oh, are you surprised a man cares about closing the gender pay gap? Well, these courageous men, like myself, earn less than their wives. See, I don't think that one works either.
Start, but I might not be the best judge of it, I suppose. Because again, when you present it on a Zoom call and it's not on stand
Yeah.
up, I just
Yeah.
want to zoom into. I don't know. It's weird. Like I can't put myself there to hear it that way.
The
Hmm.
concept is most people thinking, oh, closing the gender pay gap. He's saying that women should make the same as men. But no, I'm saying I make less than my wife. And I shouldn't, even if I'm not. And I thought about exploring that further, even though I only have a minute, about like, well, I don't want to do as much work and I want to be less qualified and still make as much as my much smarter, more talented wife.
Uh, it's too smart somehow.
Yeah. Okay.
I think for whatever reason that requires too much thinking. Not
Yep.
like it's
And
not
that's
smart,
huge. Yep. If
right?
it requires too much thinking, then yep. All right.
Okay.
See,
What
I
else?
told you these jokes wouldn't work.
Well, there you go. You're
I
saving.
figured I figured that out at least.
Okay, good. So what about the next one?
All right. The next one was, so this was originally created based on the line of thinking of performance enhancers.
Hmm.
I went through a lot of different thoughts and somehow it got down to this. So be prepared. I tried ADHD medication so I could work, and then my penis wouldn't. Or didn't. So, erectile dysfunction joke based on a true experience.
I'm not making the correlation between the ADHD and the
So
performance
some
enhancing. Oh, right, performance
I
enhancing.
was on ADHD medication known for causing it.
Right.
And that happened.
Okay.
And so I was trying to draw on that experience and putting, so I could work, but then
Right.
my penis didn't.
Got it. So the performance enhancing drug for ADHD had a negative performance impact on other aspects of your life.
Correct. And
Got
then
it.
so I was trying to go further into that line of thinking. So next line would be, once again, these aren't working, but I could format spreadsheets, but I couldn't put in work between the sheets. And then another line of thinking was trying to come up with an analogy of what it was like. And the best thing I got is one of those inflatable men, like at a car dealership.
Oh, yeah.
And how it appears to be fully up and then it just folds on itself. And that was where I went with like a line of thinking of how to explain it, and then trying to think of the tie-in between like a fan blowing into that and my wife trying to blow on. Not that had happened in that situation, but I was trying to think of some way to tie it together to make it really funny eventually. So I was going down that path, but I couldn't figure out anything that really helped tie it all together.
Yeah, I think that's a funny visual that you could incorporate. I think where I got lost a bit was the jump right from ADHD to kind of like an erectile thing.
Yeah.
Like there was too big a gap somehow. But if you could,
and that's the problem with like, it's interesting because like there are examples of overusing word economy. Mm-hmm. Where it's too, I try to cut out every single unnecessary word, and then sometimes I cut out necessary words, and it doesn't always click. And I think that's what I'm struggling with right now. I've tried to trim these down to such tight one-liners that they're not working because it's missing a little context, or it's jumping too quickly to a punchline.
Yeah, well, too smart still. Like it's word economy, but it's it's pulled out some of the nuance or care. Yeah, it's too tight. It's too tight. It would be just straight up like then it's just a dad joke where it's really clear it's a dad joke, but it better make sense because there's no, you know what I mean?
Right.
It's funny how we always end up kind of on the topic of dad jokes, but I think like that's something we've talked about before. Like it's to be embraced. You're a dad, and I don't know. I just keep coming back to this. Is that, you know, yeah, maybe the jokes like, the self-deprecation jokes. Like you pick on yourself a lot with those.
Yeah,
and it might work. It might work better in being a dad than being a partner, because most of your jokes are more about how your partner's impacted, but you loved a good dad joke. So, and also there's probably like, how do women see dad jokes, or is dad a joke, you know? Or like there's dad bod, right? There's all these.
I don't know. That's a good question. I mean, I think probably like most other people, like they can be funny. I mean, if you're really gonna try to make dad jokes funny, you gotta like go all in and just keep doing them to a point where it's almost so ridiculous that becomes part of the joke. Like if you're doing a full set of dad jokes, if you just do a few and then bail, like it's just kind of,
Yeah.
And I've done that plenty of times before.
Yeah.
And I've tried to stray away from them. I've had other comics tell me, stop doing dad jokes. Mm-hmm. Even though that's what I enjoy.
Well, it won't serve you, I guess, if it becomes all that you're known for. Because you're painted into a corner too. So no, but there's a charm in how you present yourself as a dad. Like it's clear that you're earnest and trying, but you know, you view yourself as somehow lacking. And I know exactly how that feels, because that's how I felt. You know, my kids are now 20 and 22, and it's like, well, I didn't fuck them up too bad, so I guess that's a win. You know, like it's about all I could do to reflect now. But interesting.
Yeah, so trying to create jokes around the other topics that we talked about, just I don't know, it didn't seem to click for me for some reason.
Okay. Well, I mean, we've got roughly half an hour here. You want to just try a whole new line? Because you know you can rely on other stuff. You also know you can not do the show, but you're not going to do that. So you know, do you want to try a whole new?
Sure. So we could try to play with one-liners or just a minute set and stick to one topic.
Well, like what's a concept that you could talk about for a minute, and maybe put the jokes in there versus write the jokes and then trying to write the preamble around the jokes.
So concept being like a premise or a real story, or what?
A real story or a fabricated one. I mean, I still remember our when we were talking about Bob Barker, and your initial thing was like, what if he just, what was it? He hated dogs or whatever.
Yeah. What if Bob Barker just really hates dogs?
Yeah, but like that evolved into a 20-minute thing where we're talking about all sorts of crazy ideas. Like that would be take a concept like that and like, what other questions have you wondered before about, like in that case, it was an observation about Bob Barker. But has there been others like that where it's like, it's a funny premise and then we can just see if we can expand upon it?
I'd have to look through notes. Nothing like jumps out, because usually I base things on stories or something that's real to me, because otherwise it's just forced and it's often not funny. If the audience can't find a connection between a joke and you, it's hard for them to laugh at it. Mm-hmm. Unless that's all you do. It's like random one-liners. Let's see. Looking over some of my notes and other. I mean, I got my traditional set list.
So well, there you go. What's a joke that's always worked that maybe you could build around? Like maybe where you kind of went like, oh, that's a sealed container, but what if you reopened it and revisited it, and maybe there's more that could be drawn out of it collaboratively?
Yeah. So one of them, the bald joke that I start with often is, at a young age I was abandoned by my hair, and now my scalp has trust issues. And I've tried to explore more around bald, but I haven't come up with a lot there.
Could you make an observation about any other bald people in the room and then ask questions and open it up again?
Possibly, but I can't rely on somebody else being bald there. Mm. And I'm just not comfortable being on the spot with like crowd work.
Well, I don't necessarily even need crowd work. It was just more like you could somehow have interplay just because you spotted an ally in the room, right? Like, this guy gets it, and then go into some other piece where, I mean, is there a brotherhood of bald men? Do bald men meet and discuss bald issues? Like there's entrepreneur clubs where they meet and talk about challenges of running a business and, the things that nobody hears about. Something I need to do in our local area here soon. There's meetups for all kinds of things. I wonder if there's a balding meetup. And that, I mean, actually, that'd be an interesting thing. Like if you were to plan one, like we need a place for bald men to, meet and discuss our issues and then just what those issues are, and then you can go into like so many things, like what is the criteria to join, and what if someone's hair starts growing back? Like, what do you have a protocol for kicking them out of the group because they no longer, meet your base criteria?
If we find out somebody bought Rogaine, are they out of the club?
Yeah. Or is someone doing performance enhancing and trying to get into the club? So they're actually taking some sort of medicine that causes balding just so they could join your club. Like it could be like we're having to actually like push people away from our club because the donuts that we bring in are so popular that we've actually got, women appearing that have shaved their heads and clearly they didn't need to, like there's so many ways you could take.
I think the hard part for me is just making it like realistic, having some kind of basis other than me just being bald. Is where then do I draw the link between like myself and this crazy idea?
I I think if you were, again, it's this area of exploration of like, you're gonna host a support group for bald men, and quite literally the questions, you're establishing it. It hasn't started yet, but these are your concerns. Having been like there could be all sorts of things. You could take a concept like that, and you're putting yourself right in the middle of it. Yeah, I don't know. That's one area you could go.
It says there are support groups for people dealing with hair loss.
Oh, sure.
American Hair Loss Association.
Yeah.
There's Reddit community.
But if you're looking for jokes around it, it could be like, who's allowed and who's not. If it's, I don't know. There's probably something there if you wanted it. But
there's a on-air support group named The Bald Truth, which is part of the American Hair Loss Association. It's been nationally syndicated for more than 8 years, bringing to light how emotionally devastating living with hair loss can be in today's appearance-obsessed society.
Yeah. And it's funny because by nature of making a group like that, they're just drawing more attention to it too, to make it seem like it's a problem versus maybe it's not a problem. It's just how your hair grows. It's just like it's not actually a problem.
Yeah, I think there are a lot of opportunities for jokes around this. Just the ideas of being in one, what qualifies, what doesn't, if you're trying to get out of it. I mean, because a lot of support groups, you can't really like just do something to no longer be in that group.
Well, what if you grew your hair back? What if you actually, metaphysically were healing and grew your hair back? Would you be?
Most people don't believe that's an option, though. That's not a joke I could do. Most people don't believe that's possible.
No, or you could plant the seed that it's possible. But then come back.
Do that in a minute of stand up, though. That's not going to work. If I just want to stand up there and yell at them and tell them, "Hey, consider this."
Yeah, no. I was just because I thought that the funny would be in like, what's the procedure to discharge someone from the group because they grew their hair back? Like they betrayed the spirit of the group by growing their hair back,
Or are you rooting for each other to no longer be in the group?
Yeah. I mean, within a minute, you're not going to probably be able to run with this concept, but it could be something. And I guess the other question is, are you comfortable talking about it, or are you tired of talking about it?
No, I'm comfortable. I got a little, maybe not exhausted, but like I felt like I was stuck coming up with additional original bald jokes around the first one. Like in addition to that intro joke about, being abandoned at a young age.
Okay. You want to try some yes/no questions to see where your energy goes with this kind of stuff?
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. So you're sitting down, right?
Yep.
Are you wearing a top hat?
No.
Are you wearing a green shirt?
I don't know. I didn't know.
Do you have a beard?
Yes.
Do you want to do jokes about baldness?
Yes.
Oh, there was a pause there.
I still said yes, but yeah, there's a pause.
Yeah, but there was resistance there, right?
Maybe.
So yeah. So maybe are you tired of talking about baldness?
No.
Okay. Does it make you uncomfortable talking about baldness?
No.
Okay. Do you think right now your jokes aren't good enough about baldness?
Yes.
Okay.
I always think my jokes are not good enough about anything.
Well, do you think you're good at writing jokes?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you want to try writing jokes on a new topic for now?
I'm not sure. I'm okay exploring this idea.
Okay. But I'm just looking to, like what feels good, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't mean not ever. It just mean not right now. So, do you think you can come up with enough jokes to fill a minute on this topic?
I would think so, because ideally, if there's laughter, then I mean, you're dealing with what 80, 90 words.
Yeah.
Um,
So that
so
was
it's
meant to be
not
a
a
yes no
lot.
question though. So because you answered with I don't think so. So at that point you're in the mind again. So that's what I'm trying to get you out of is just like where does your gut want to go? Where does your energy want to take you? Right. That's what I think is can be really telling.
Yeah,
Um, hmm. Are you nervous about this show?
I think I'm nervous about every show.
Okay. Are you more nervous about this show?
Maybe just because it's in a couple days and I don't know what I'm doing yet.
Do you still want to do the show?
Mm, kind of.
Mm. So that might be a no. Maybe just let yourself off the hook for that one too. You said you could get out of it.
True, but I always I tend to do that. I've done that before. Erica knows I do that. Like, and I don't want to do that. I want to force myself to do it. I don't know why I want to force myself to do it.
Okay. So do you want to force yourself to do this show?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that was a full sacral yes. So let's. How do we make this easier for you? Do you even want to work on this right now?
Yeah, I
Okay.
do.
Um, do you want to try a new topic? No, you're hanging on to the ball thing. Okay. So where do we go with this then?
All right. So we could start with like a first line, not something that's supposed to be funny. So if the one I wrote down is like, I've been thinking about joining a hair loss support group, or it could just be they have hair loss support groups, or it could be my joke and then figuring out a way to tie that into hair loss support groups.
Yeah. Well, like you start with your joke that you already know.
Okay.
And then like, it's kind of like the speaking of hair loss or a better way, but did you know that there's hair loss support groups? I just found this out today, like or yesterday, like Thursday, right? So it's true because you literally Googled it today. And then and it got me thinking, like what's the criteria to join these groups? And do you get to stay if your hair, like, I don't know, you could just ask questions. Do you get to stay if your hair grows back? Um, are people, what kind of food do you serve during these meetups? Are they Zoom calls or does, people not like the glare of their white lights on their head during those calls? So they come in person, right? Like there could be all sorts of, there's so many places you could probably take that.
Yeah.
And you've got your lead-in joke that works, so you already like have them paying attention, and then you're just flipping the conversation to an observation you've made. It's kind of moving into Jerry Seinfeld material, like what's the deal with all the,
Okay.
But you don't have to say it that way. But I mean, he
Right.
does such a good job with that stuff, right? People can relate to observing something, and if you can take it to the extreme of the absurd quickly, like in that minute, it could work quite well, I think.
So what do you think it's absurd? I think trying to figure out like the weirdest part about it, or like, do you think it's odd that there's a hair loss support group?
I don't think it's odd because there's a support group for everything and there's a label for everything. So I don't see the need for one for sure. But then that, I guess the questions you could look for the funny in is, asking why would someone go to one of those? What do they act like? You're not going to grow your hair back during one of those, right? Like, do they talk about? Is it about helping explore new ways to grow hair, or is it to just sit and say we have no hair and gripe, and get mad at people with hair? Like, do you just sit there and actually, so there you go. During that group, you could paint a picture of. So they've got all these dartboards, and there's pictures of like Brad Pitt on one, and like who has famous locks of hair, and you basically like you get a little burning seances where you cast spells during it to grow hair. So what you have to do is, take a picture of Leo DiCaprio and sprinkle something on it, and then say something 3 times backwards, and like what do people do at these meetups? be a question I would be asking, and because it's partly, do we need a meetup? What's the criteria? How does one can one be kicked out of one?
So it does look like they discuss treatment options
Hmm.
and hear what others' experiences were like and commiserate over the emotional upheaval that hair loss can cause.
Hmm. Yeah, it's a view that people have about themselves, right? Something that they view as a flaw, and so some of the yeah. But you could just take that to like those are the sensible uh, reasons, but you could definitely take it to the extreme.
Okay, so what would be the so for looking at me, what would be the dumbest reason that I would join a hair loss support group, or or weirdest way reason? So, like for example, if I said I'm thinking about joining a hair loss support group, but and for a different reason to like catch people off guard, like if there's a surprise element, what would be the weirdest reason that I would join a hair loss support group?
Well, what came to mind
I'm excited to hear this.
is you're an aspiring cyclist and you're hoping that you're going to catch someone in there that has alopecia and you're hoping to figure out what makes them tick, so because if you get alopecia you won't have to shave your legs, like you could expand your baldness throughout your entire body to be sleeker for a bike race. Which is so absurd, right? And the person with alopecia is not going to think that's funny, but I'd be like, what are you doing? What are you eating? Because I want to, I'm preparing for this bike race, and I don't want hair on my legs, and I don't want to shave. So if I could just, learn how to get alopecia by, like, what are your traumas? What what makes you
Or
so?
like if I was trying to hawk a product or something, or like convince other bald men of something, what would that be? Like the I don't know if you ever saw Breaking Bad, but where they join um not AA, but Narcotics Anonymous or whatever it is, so they could sell them drugs.
Right.
So like a version of that, like some weird self-serving reason that somebody would join a hair loss support group.
Well, yeah. I mean, if you're a hat salesman,
Wigs, yeah, hats.
right? So yeah, wigs would probably be too obvious. So but it could be hats. It could be that you have a surplus of hats from the 2023 World Series, and you're like, I gotta offload these fucking hats. So we're gonna go to balding support groups and
Who's the most famous hat manufacturer? Like, what if the support groups were sponsored by, I don't know, Kangol or Lids, or what would you think of when you think of hats? Who's the main like manufacturer? Who benefits the most from hat sales?
well, Lids is a big one because they've got them here
Okay.
too. So that's a chain. Kangol, I know you mean those hats that were really popular, but that's more of a brand. Um, But yeah, you could just be like, I got a truckload of hats, and I don't know what to do with them. So we're gonna offer them as door prizes and just hold various, like I got to do 150. We're gonna do a whole year of weekly sessions because I've got a, you know 5 dozen hats I got to get rid of. So we're gonna do them as door prizes. You do a raffle at these things. You're just giving these hats away or something. I don't know.
Or think about like I don't know. I'm thinking about like other support groups or organizations or like protests or things. Would I be standing outside protesting the hair loss support group? Because like so one of the weird things is I do have people like I've had people before asking me like, well, are you going to do anything about it? Like, are you trying to fix it? Are you trying to get hair back? Like people ask that question. You're not going to ask that if somebody's at a support group for like losing a loved one or something. Like, well, you're just going to get another person to fill that void in your life, or like, I don't know. It's just using a stream of consciousness to hopefully strike some kind of genius
mm-hmm.
from you or me, probably you.
Well, no, I think like there's already things here you can play with for sure. You know, yeah, like what are the absurd reasons for someone to come to a group like that? or who would be a guest speaker that you'd bring in and why? And so maybe it would be an absurd guest speaker, like we decided to bring in so and
Ooh.
so. I mean, I don't know, either famous bald people or people that are famous for not being bald. Is that a thing?
I don't know about not being bald. Like, there's some people with good heads of hair, but I don't, unless you're talking about like Medusa with snakes. I don't know somebody like exclusively famous for their head of hair. As far as bald, you think like Mr. T, as far as like somebody really famous for it.
Yeah. Interesting.
Or like maybe I don't know, fighting against. Another thing that's interesting is I feel like it's not just me. A lot of people that are bald, or maybe it is, I don't know. I'm bald, but I have plenty of chest hair. Like, that's not a problem. Why can't I lose that instead? Or maybe I'm like promoting the showing of chest hair
Hmm.
instead to make up for the loss of hair on the top of my head.
Yeah, and why is that metaphysically? That it's not like you can't produce hair. Like, why did it choose not to appear on the top? What is the message your body's trying to send you, or the universe is trying to send you? I mean,
I know, and wouldn't it be more of a body positive thing if I tried to just like actively show off my chest hair and like try to make that a thing? Is
mhm.
there any comedy in that, or is that not really?
I'm sure there's comedy in it. It's a curious question for sure. Just why hair grows the way it does. To be honest, it's not like you had a burn on your head or something, right? So,
No.
hmm. It's a curious area of question, or like, it's not. You asked earlier, but it's not outrageous to see that there's already support groups for baldness. But I imagine it's not a huge thing,
No, I don't think it's
right?
a huge market.
Yeah.
No. And
Uh,
why wouldn't people go? Is it that they're embarrassed that it's not that big of a problem for most people, other than those who suffer from alopecia, which obviously that is a problem that does affect their life much more than it affects mine.
yeah, I mean, I knew a guy that had it, so he had no eyelashes. So if he
Yep.
sweated, it was awful, right? The salt goes right in his eyes, like,
Oh gosh, I didn't even think about that aspect of it, but yeah.
right? Like, that's just a real basic, you know. Um, hmm. Well, I think you've got something there, and you responded to wanting to pursue it. So I would say don't give up on this thread. Like,
Okay.
keep going down there. But I'd mind map it. I would, baldness is the key, but then, or is it the baldness support group is the nugget, and then come at it from every angle as a new member, a member that has graduated. Can you graduate from the group? Like you get, or it could be like, I don't know why I'm thinking about stonemasons all of a sudden, but like masons, you move up inside the mason thing, right? You can get up to like a 33rd level, and so it's kind of like, or like the scouts. You go from beavers to cubs to scouts, or you get
So
bad.
like, so you have like a weekly hair count of like how many hairs you have. It's like, oh look, Jeff's up to 1,043. He's gonna move up.
Well, you could be like, our particular group is doing the scout sash thing. So we actually show up and we've got our sash across the front, and we sew on different patches based on balding accomplishments. So
I
did
like the
you?
thought of patches associated with
Yeah, yeah,
hair, hair loss and growth.
yeah,
They're not badges; we call them patches.
yeah. And so, but then what patches would you put on that sash? You could go explore that in 1,000 different ways. Like in scouts, you would get a ability to start a fire badge, or do a good deed badge. But what badges would you give to people that are, um, enthusiastic about balding. Like, and at that point you could probably reach into your bald jokes. Like, you probably have a bunch that you've heard that could come, like the source of that joke come back up and somehow be a badge. Um, like, one joke that I always I don't even think it's where I've seen it, heard it, but it was like, it's someone who's bald. It'd be very easy to just go for Halloween as a stick of Revlon or Roll-On, And this one comedian used to do a bit about, he would kind of like wipe his head like he was doing his pits and stuff. And there's probably old jokes that could be like, what badge or patch would you put on your sash at your weekly, support meeting? And yeah, that could. I mean, that might even evolve into something well beyond a minute, where you could paint a picture of your support group and describe some of the characters that come. Like, the leader, the grand poobah of the group is Bob, and you should see his widow's peak. Like, it's majestic, and
And then, are we trying to not be bald, or are we trying to make the rest of the world bald like us?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and maybe it's both. Maybe it's that the group is actually splitting. So there's the evil spin-off that wants people to be bald. And
it's probably too far into the weeds, but I like the thought process.
But like, they're a fringe group that's broken off, and I don't know, man. I think if you were to just like start with that premise of having a support group for baldness,
okay,
and then expand on that, it makes me think of. And it came up this week a bunch of times, but the Austin Powers movie, and where Dr. Evil and Scotty were getting family counseling with Princess Leia. Oh my God, what's her name?
Frau Verbissina, the character in the movie?
No, Carrie Fisher.
Oh, Carrie Fisher. Okay,
Carrie Fisher was in.
She's in.
Yeah, Austin Powers. She was the counselor when Dr. Evil was talking about being partially frozen. And she was like, think of the words he's using. He said he was frozen his whole life. Think about the meaning of that. And he's like, no, I was actually cryogenically frozen for 25 years. And and then, like, sometimes we want to kill each other. It sometimes feels that way, doesn't it? He's like, no, I was trying to have him murdered, but he's supposed to be very, like, there's.
That's a good scene. I forgot about that.
Like, maybe go watch it and then use that as inspiration of, like, take that concept, and now it's
doesn't Seth Green call him a bald-headed freak or something?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So, but imagine that little circle, right? And the characters that are in that, you could imagine in your mind's eye a group, and with 5 or 6 characters, almost like you're writing a sitcom. You actually establish personality of these people, and then just see where it goes. I bet you'd. And maybe it's more than your 1 minute bit, but it could turn into something that's an entirely fun dialogue that you could. Then you can always play with it too. To me, and again, I've never done stand up, but I think strategically, I would want to have something like that I could always throw stuff in and add stuff, like it, because it's the premise, it's a concept that's absurd, and then you're just always feeding that. So every time you actually do that set, you're refining and tweaking it. I mean, I think that's a good one.
It's a decent place to start. Problem is trying to come up with jokes around that in like 2 days. I feel like this is like a month-long thing of carefully figuring out where the funny is in this thought and how to develop that.
Well, you got your opening joke, which is establishing the baldness thing. And speaking of baldness, I was recently researching baldness support groups, and I found one in a nearby state, and I went and had a visit last week, and this is, and then just the make up what you observed, or it might be easier than you think.
Okay.
But I say that knowing that we have to drop off here in 1 minute. So.
Yeah. All right. Well, I might, if I think of some jokes or some further premises down this line, I might send you through Volley. But
yeah, man.
All right.
Yeah. Well, actually, once you got your bit, the 1 minute available, shoot me a Volley. Like, deliver. Like, tell me I'm now doing my set. And
if I even get it together,
Well, you have permission to bail on it, although you
Okay.
basically said you didn't want to, right?
Yeah.
Your gut response there was that you want to follow through. So let that pressure exist, but know
Okay.
that you don't have to. So,
All
all right,
right.
buddy. Till
All right,
next time.
man. Good talking to you.
See you,
All
bud.
right.